says Mr. Swirl, the internet's most disturbed user. This video is by the channel Nick Crowley. Again, it was requested by Kahosan849. So thank you for the support, man. Appreciate it. Let's go ahead and check it out. Mr. Swirl, the internet's most disturbed user by Nick Crowley. Hey, good night, happy times.
Pattaya, Thailand. Two young brothers enter a local internet cafe, take their seats, and begin playing their favorite games. One boy was 13, and the other just 8. And together they sat there and played the way they always did, getting lost in their screens, wasting the day away, until one of the boys felt a tap on his shoulder. Standing there beside them was a similarly aged child, a stranger to the boys, but a friendly one who strikes up a conversation and eventually poses an offer. According to the unnamed child, he had a friend who lived close by that owned a special computer, one far better than the device they were currently using.
Oh no. Is some freaking creeper adult using a kid to lure other children away from this cafe or gaming place to... Oh, he said, come. Oh, this kid said, oh, come with me. I have a house down the road with better computers and better games. Oh no, that's messed up.
And one that had any game you could ever dream of playing. And he was headed to that friend's home right now, but he didn't want to go alone.
No.
It was an offer that the boys just couldn't refuse. And considering the child was clearly around their age, they saw no red flags and agreed to go with him, following the boy to a nearby apartment building.
No, I can tell you right now that freaking... That's smart, but incredibly disturbing that there's some adult using a kid to lure other kids to this apartment. I guarantee that's what's happening here.
Then up 7 flights of stairs and into a dark room.
Okay, Ryan.
Waiting for them inside that room wasn't some sort of supercharged computer, and it surely wasn't a friend of the boys.
Oh no.
Instead, it was a monster in every sense of the word. A depraved soul who, years down the line, would go on to become one of the most notorious predators ever to walk this earth.
Oh my gosh.
Known only at the time as Mr. Swirl. And these children had just fallen into his trap.
What a creepy ass name, Mr. Swirl? That's creepy, Mr. Swirl. That's a weird name. Yoshi, to answer your question, man, no. The 5 newest Nuke's Top 5 videos I have not watched. No one's really requested Nuke's Top 5 lately, so maybe someone will request Nuke's Top 5 one of these days, and I'll watch some of that.
Who has been the subject of a worldwide manhunt.
Who's now at the heart of a global manhunt.
Repeated abuse of a dozen or more underage computer software to obscure his own face in the picture.
Oh, I know, Underground. Trust me, bro. I know.
Guys, I just wanted to announce that I'm currently working on 2 collaborative projects with my good friend Nexpo, aka Ryan. Together we made this channel called Nick and Ryan, where we travel to absolutely no worries, because this channel...
Sorry, guys. He was just promoting something there, so I'm going to skip forward.
It's unclear if they knew what they were looking for, or if they had just happened upon it by pure chance. But in 2004, German police entered a long-forgotten storage unit, where beneath the piles of junk and old appliances, they'd unearth a single hard drive.
Oh,
Once
no.
plugged into the computer, the device revealed hundreds of images, some showing various locations, breathtaking scenery, delicious meals, and CP.
Oh,
the
gosh.
images showed scenes of depraved sexual abuse being done to individuals who were clearly minors, with this abuse being far worse than you'd ever imagine.
Sick
and it wasn't
bastards.
just one child either, as across that hard drive seemed to be evidence of multiple separate instances of abuse, including images of 3 young boys taken in a dark apartment building. The discovery was horrid, though sadly all in a day's work for investigators.
I tell you what, guys, the more YouTube videos I watch and stuff like this, having 3 kids of my own, man, you got to watch your kids closely. At the park, anywhere, the Walmart, the grocery store, trust me. There are some sick people in this world. And if you have kids of your own, watch your kids very carefully because there's some weird people out there in this world, trust me.
Encountered things of this nature on a daily basis, and it's a discovery that likely would have never been discussed by the media after that one day had it not been for one unusual detail. Typically, in cases involving CP, those taking the photographs and performing the actual abuse will almost always go out of their way to ensure that they aren't shown on camera. That way, if authorities should stumble upon it, they would essentially be unidentifiable.
Untraceable.
However, the dozens of photos found on this particular hard drive were different. Because rather than hiding just out of frame like all the other predators seemed to do, the man behind these images had instead gone out of his way to ensure he was featured within them, shamelessly inserting himself into every single picture, even posing for them, before, during, and after he had changed the lives of these kids forever. And although his entire body was shown in these photographs, the only thing hiding his identity was the addition of a single effect. One that swirled the man's face into a distorted, pixelated mess, making him completely unrecognizable, and leaving his face to
I really hope this guy was caught at the end of this video. I hope he was caught and found, put in prison. Trust me, inmates in prison don't like people like this. They'll deal with them the prison way.
like this. There was something so disturbingly arrogant about it. A man posing with his victims while destroying their lives, hiding behind only a single swirl of color, almost as if he was taunting any investigators who might eventually find these images. And given the clear indications that this man was obviously a serial abuser, and likely still out there—
Well, we know now why his name was Mr. Swirl. Every picture, his face is in some weird swirl effect.
Tracking this anonymous figure down became priority 1 for law enforcement in the area, and it's there that he would be given his nickname, Mr. Swirl.
I feel you, Underground.
And with the swirl being the only thing standing in the way of investigators getting to see his face, most would have assumed that identifying him would be a walk in the park. However, this was far from the case. As the images began to be dissected, it quickly became apparent that deciphering the sensor was going to be far more difficult than initially thought, and potentially even impossible, as the pixels had been scrambled in such a unique way that there wasn't any known method to unscramble it. And quickly, what should have been their most valuable clue, the one that stood so tantalizingly close—
Guys, this looks like an SCP or like some horror character out of a game, doesn't it? Doesn't that sound like a horror game, Mr. Swirl? Except this is real life, and this is 1,000 times more disturbing and messed up than like a video game or something. But Mr. Swirl sounds like a horror game or something. Oh, man.
Became a lost cause, leaving investigators at their first dead end. Realizing that things were about to get much more difficult, the German police enlisted the help of an agency known as Interpol, an international crime-stopping organization.
Yeah, I've seen several stories. If someone's a predator or ever did anything to children inappropriately or bad, if they're caught and put in prison, trust me, the prison inmates will deal with them. Brandon with another 10 gifted memberships. Thank you, Brandon. Let's go, man. We got a bunch of people receiving the memberships. Matthew, Devin, Patrick, Nico, Cobalt, Nesquik, Bunny. Let's go, guys. My goal for members for the stream was 15, and we're at 20. So we're well over the goal. Guys, shout out to Brandon. Thank you for the gifted memberships, man.
With a special unit dedicated to resolving crimes against children. Interpol immediately—
But like I was saying, yeah, if any sick individuals like this, if it involves children and they're caught and put in prison, they won't last long. They will not last long because those prison inmates will find out what you're in prison for. And they don't they don't take kindly to people who hurt children. So they'll get what's coming to them, you know what I mean?
He began to get to work, attempting to decipher the photos in a different way, this time by using context clues in the pictures to track down where exactly they were taken, which in turn could tell them where this man was from and where the abuse was taking place. But this too unearthed yet another problem. The first batch of images was discovered to have come from Cambodia, but the next showed evidence that the man was in Vietnam, and then in Thailand, and potentially even South Korea as well. Rather than gaining clarity, the locations of these images instead made the search even wider, as the man was seemingly traveling.
Guys, isn't that crazy? The amount of information they can get off a photo. They can somehow look at the photo and figure out in the details where it was taken, the location. It's just tracking down and figuring out who the individual is who's, his name's Mr. Swirl. That's the hard part. It's crazy the amount of information they can get from just a photo.
Country to country, committing his crimes and then fleeing, thus never staying long enough for law enforcement to catch up with him, making it completely unclear to investigators where he was actually from. And given just how vast his travels were, at this point, it was realized that Mr. Swirl could be anywhere, a moving target, so to speak, and an active one as well.
Oh my gosh, this dude is constantly moving from, they said, Vietnam, South Korea, Cambodia. This son of a bitch, he's not staying in one location. He's constantly traveling, so they can't pinpoint where he is. So even if they figure out in the photo who this guy is, which is very difficult, he's constantly moving to different places. New victims, and it's going to be very hard to track him down.
During the investigation, which would later be dubbed Operation Vico, in reference to Vietnam and Cambodia, which seemed to be the main sites of his abuse, investigators made a disturbing discovery.
No, gifted membership from someone means you get 30 days or a month of the membership features for free. So if it's gifted to you, it doesn't cost you anything, Noah. So guys, make sure if you got a gifted membership from Brandon, make sure and tell Brandon thank you in the chat.
Mr. Swirl's photographs were not exclusive to just that hard drive, as photo after photo began to appear on various online forums, with all of them featuring that disturbed, swirling face. The images were shared across the web seemingly straight from the man himself, and were sent out to various predatory groups that were filled with individuals just as sick as he was. Within these groups, it was considered a badge of honor to show your body and face within the content you made, thus leading to the sender becoming well-respected among his peers, which showed us two things.
Well-respected?
One, that this was likely the reason why Mr. Swirl inserted himself in these photos, as it had led to him becoming a beloved member of their twisted community. In turn,
Underground,
access to all the CP he could want.
Well, I'm hoping at the end of this that he got caught. If not, I hope he gets caught very soon.
And two, that the images found on the hard drive did not account for his whole body of work, as in these chat rooms and forums, police would find far more photos featuring their suspect, raising the total from a few dozen to nearly 300.
Dang.
By this point, Mr. Swirl had been untraceable. Authorities were essentially searching for a ghost, and though these new images must have felt like a gut punch at first, they would eventually prove to be integral to their investigation.
No, Vicky, Mr. Sicko instead of Mr. Swirl
had made a key error.
Uh-oh, he made an error.
Within these postings, Mr. Swirl had forgotten to hide his IP address, in turn revealing the general area in which they had been sent, with a location.
Oh, you made a mistake, buddy. They're gonna find your ass.
Being Vancouver, Canada.
Canada?
This break revealed the key detail that he had some sort of tie to Vancouver, and that he was likely a sex tourist, someone who travels to countries that have loose laws around their age of consent in order to be able to abuse children without any repercussions.
Wow.
With Mr. Swirl clearly doing the same thing, visiting multiple countries in Asia, making his material, coming home, and then sharing it with his friends. It certainly didn't solve the case, but it...
Sorry, guys. I know a few of you guys live in Canada. This guy travels to places and then comes back home, but I think he lives in Canada. Oh, gosh.
Was finally a step in the right direction. And unbeknownst to the team working on Operation Vico, they were quickly approaching an even bigger revelation.
Oh shit, what'd they find out now?
Hard on pinning down Mr. Swirl's location. Some members of the team held on hope that the images themselves could still be unscrambled, and upon digging a bit deeper, one member of the team would actually recognize the swirl as having come from a fairly standard editing program, which revealed something. The swirl effect wasn't like a typical sensor or blur. Those effects completely mask or even remove the pixels from the actual photograph.
Don't tell me that they can reverse the swirl effect and get his freaking face. Oh, that would be awesome.
Making them nearly impossible to decipher. But this effect did neither of those things, and instead it simply rearranged the pixels of the man's face.
Yeah, Mr. Swirl, you're not as smart as you thought you were, bro. You're not as smart as you thought you were. It would have been better to just use a freaking blur filter over your face. I'm not saying I want him to get caught, but he thought he was smart using the swirl effect. I think they're going to figure out how to reverse the swirl effect and like see what his actual face looks like.
To a swirling pattern, meaning that this image still contained all of its original pixels, and Mr. Swirl's face was somewhere in this picture. They just had to piece it together. And so, in what must have felt like a Hail Mary at the time, an investigator put one of the images into that very same editing software, then clicked that very same swirl effect, and simply reversed it. Which in turn led to this.
Are you kidding me?
In an investigation that started all the way back in 2000.
It actually worked. They just reversed the swirl. Oh my god, it actually worked.
2004. Finally, Mr. Swirl's face was revealed with a single
wow.
click, a whole 3 years later, confirming not only what the man looked like, but also that it was truly just one man behind the swirl.
He looks like a freaking creep.
All they had to do was find him. Interpol first started their search by sending this man's image to every single police station the network had access to, asking if anyone across the world had a criminal in their database who might match this photo, but this attempt would fall flat, indicating that whoever this man was, he likely had no prior criminal record. Time was clearly of the essence.
That was smart.
And he knew that with every waking moment, Mr. Swirl could be adding to his list of growing victims. And wanting to act fast, Interpol made a fairly unprecedented decision. They reached out to every single major news outlet across the world and asked them to show this man's face on their broadcast to help bring this predator to justice.
Someone's gonna recognize him on the news.
Mr. Swirl's face were also plastered in all corners of the internet, and within just one day, the story was quite literally everywhere. What started as a small search for an anonymous man had become an international manhunt overnight.
Wow.
And within just hours, Mr. Swirl would be anonymous no more.
He was recognized. Someone recognized him.
This hour, the worldwide search for a suspected pedophile is concentrated in Thailand this morning. We now know the suspect is a Canadian. The CBC's Michael McAuliffe reports from Bangkok.
This morning, Interpol announced they now believe they know who the man is. He's been identified as a Canadian, 32-year-old Christopher Paul Neal.
Sorry, Canada. Like I said, he's Canadian. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry you guys had to share the same air with this sick individual.
His name is
the
Christopher
same oxygen.
Paul Neal. Not only did Neal's face and body match perfectly with Mr. Swirl, but he also had grown up just outside of Vancouver where the IP was tracked to. And he had moved from country to country across Asia in recent years, countries like Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand. The resemblance was so undeniable that even one of his own family members came forward to help identify him. Christopher Neal was in fact Mr. Swirl, a discovery that came with some...
Oh no, DW. Hopefully Nick Crowley in this video says what happened to him, but yeah, he won't last long in prison, trust me. He won't last long.
Disturbing revelations. As it turns out, Christopher Neal was actually working as a children's English teacher, a job he held in each of the countries he was discovered to have abused and poisoned.
Oh my god, he was a teacher?
He used this position of power to lure in children from his classes, to eventually abuse them and share their photos online. Along with this, it was also revealed...
The frickin' children's English teacher. The worst possible job for a man like this.
that he had used his relationships with young boys to help lure in other children for him to assault. As looking back on the story that started this video, he had recruited a clueless child he knew to lure those two brothers back to his apartment.
I told you guys, he used that kid at the beginning to lure other, kids to his apartment. Man, that sick son of a bitch.
This discovery also shined a spotlight on his social media pages, and specifically his MySpace page, where he chillingly wrote, "Loving Asia, will I ever come back?" while in the midst of his abuse spree. But for me, one of the most shocking revelations was that those images that he had posted during the investigation weren't actually posted to his computer. At some point in the early 2000s, Neil had stopped home for a brief vacation to visit his family, and while there, he decided to upload all of his CP to his internet friends. But rather than using his personal device or a public computer, he instead broke into his own brother's laptop and uploaded his content there. That way, the images would be tracked to his brother and not him.
Yo! He broke in and uploaded all those images to his brother's computer. So if something happened, he was going to put his own brother under the bus and make his brother take the full charge and responsibility if something happened. His own brother. Oh man, that's messed up on another level as well. He's like, oh, if I get caught, I'm going to say, oh, it's my brother, not me.
Which explained why he never bothered to hide his IP address. The more they learned, the more disturbed the story became, as even at the time they discovered his identity, it was revealed that he had currently been working in South Korea as a teacher. But when the officers arrived to arrest the man, he was already long gone. Having certainly seen his face all over the news, Christopher made the decision to flee the country, being spotted in this image captured at an airport in Thailand, as he had flown to the country likely in an attempt to find refuge. Throughout the following
he went
days
to
and
Thailand?
Weeks, his likeness would turn up time and time again in the country, indicating that he was somewhere in Thailand hiding out. And having cornered him in the region, it wouldn't take long for police to knock on the door of an abandoned house in the middle of nowhere, in which Christopher Neal happened to be hiding, bringing the multi-year search for Mr. Swirl to an end.
They found him. Someone said in the chat he got 10 years. If this man only got 10 years in prison, that's ridiculous. He should have got 50 years to life. 10 years? That's... People get 10 years for a lot less stuff.
Following his arrest,
tried to frame his own brother.
He will be charged for his assault on those 3 young boys from the internet cafe, as it was the only crime they could prove had taken place in their country, and with it carried a prison sentence of 5 years.
5 years?
The sentencing was light, but the plan was to have Neal turned over to Canadian authorities after he did his time in Thailand, where they would also prosecute.
Oh, just 5 years in Thailand, and then he's going to get prosecuted again in Canada. Hopefully he got a lot more years in Canada.
Him all over again, with the hope being that they could do the same thing with countries like Cambodia and Vietnam, and essentially force him to live out his life in prison. However, when the sentence was completed in 2012, and Christopher was deported back to Canada, the shocking decision was made to allow Christopher Neal to walk free.
What? Oh my God, Canada!
When Neal was detained in Canada, authorities let him walk under the condition that he would never own a device that connected to the internet again, as well as the agreement that he would stay away from parks, schools, and also register as a sex...
Yeah, good luck. They said, we're going to let you walk free as long as you never have a phone or computer again, anything that connects to the internet. Do you think an individual like this, that's sick in the head, is going to never have a phone, a computer? They're going to find a way to do what they were doing before, trust me. Oh, just don't have a phone, don't have a computer. You're good to go. You can walk free. What the hell?
Offender. I can't for the life of me understand why this decision was made, but from
No, Nick, Nick Crowley, I agree with you 100%. He said, I can't for the life of me understand why this decision was made. I'm with you, bro.
What I could gather, it seemed to center around the fact that his crimes were international, and that none of his other victims had actually come forward, meaning the other countries they had hoped would prosecute never actually bothered to pursue it. And because his crime...
Yep, because he did these things to kids in other countries, not Canada, he's an innocent man. Yeah.
Crimes didn't happen on Canadian soil, not much could really be done, legally speaking. And so in the end, the hunt for Mr. Swirl ended up lasting almost as long as the sentence he served.
That's ridiculous.
And even after everything this man did, he was let loose and allowed to assimilate
Blade
back
Fire.
into society. But this isn't where our story ends.
Well, Ryan says there's a part 2 to this on Nick Crowley's channel. Well, Ryan, hopefully when I do a scary stream in the future, I can react to part 2. If someone requests part 2, that's definitely something I'd be interested in watching.
Not even a full year later in 2013, it would be uncovered that Christopher Neal had somehow managed to purchase a computer and also connected to the internet.
What a
clear
surprise!
violation of his conditions. And though he claimed it was just for writing a book about his life experiences, when investigators seized the device, they would, unsurprisingly, find even more CP. 25 images
oh
to
my
be exact,
god, bro.
including 2 with his signature swirling face. As it turns out, Christopher had been using the device to contact his fellow pedophile friends, where he would even message one of his disturbed friends right after his release, saying, "The swirl liveth still," proving without a shadow of a doubt that he was remorseless about his crimes, and took pride in his new nickname. And somehow, the discovery got even worse.
Yeah, he's proud of this. This Christopher guy, he's proud of it. He's like, I'm Mr. Swirl. I'm famous now. This only boosted his ego, guys. It only boosted his ego. He's like, I escaped prison. I'm smarter than all these cops and people. I'm back on the internet doing the same thing. It just boosted his ego.
Worse from there, as it was revealed that a friend of his had shown him how to access the deep web and how to share these photographs in practically an untraceable way, thus allowing him to continue being active in these predatory groups, no matter what restrictions were placed on him. After Canadian police made this discovery, Christopher would yet again be arrested, and this time they had the chance to really send a message and put him away forever, as clearly letting him walk away the first time was a mistake, as he wasn't reformed even in the slightest.
He didn't give a damn. He doesn't care.
The judge would give Christopher Neal the whopping sentence of just 5.5 years, with time served.
What is wrong with...
Meaning that he would only end up in jail for a little over 14 months.
Oh my gosh, just a little over a year?
The prosecution praised the sentence as a win, and Christopher vowed to change his ways, but it just doesn't sit right that as of 2016, Mr. Swirl, the man responsible for dozens and dozens of instances of extreme child abuse, which by the way are just the ones that we know of, is a free man.
Yeah, the ones we know of.
Life in Vancouver. And worst of all, he now has access to share this material through untraceable avenues, meaning that there is a good chance that he could still be out there obtaining, sharing, and who knows, maybe even producing his content. The case of Mr. Swirl is such a frustrating one. For once, a case of this nature
very frustrating
and was pursued by the full extent of the law, with the folks over at Interpol doing a fantastic job with the case, only for it all to be deflated once he was finally captured. And just knowing that he's out there living a normal life after all this, after all the lives that he's forever affected, makes this one of the most disheartening cases we've covered to date.
Frickin' ridiculous. Wow. Well, guys, I'm going to say this. I don't even think there should be a trial involved. Judges, a court system. I have 2 words. Firing squad. Or build a gallows. That would solve this issue fast. But the world nowadays is too, we can't hurt anyone's feelings, even someone like this sick individual. You know, he put him in prison for a year, let him go. We don't want to hurt his feelings. No. You need to get rid of people like this. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say, guys.